All right, if you are tuning in, welcome. We are starting tonight at 6:11 p.m. to do our interviews for our boards and commissions vacancies for the 2023 year, and the terms, of course, are beyond just that. We're going to begin. We've allotted about 5 minutes for each interview, and so I will. Mr. Miller, are you here? Can you turn on your video and your audio?
Yes, you can hear me?
Good. Yes, we can. Good to hear you, Gib. So Gib has applied for the zoning board, and I'm going to be asking the same question of all of our applicants. If there are other questions that come from council members, you're welcome to ask them. But Gib, can you tell us something about yourself and why you applied for this or reapplied for this board position?
Okay, just a couple quick things. So Mary and I are short-term Swissvale residents. I think we're only going on 37 years now. But originally I had joined the zoning board when there was a vacancy and they basically were just short. So I served a partial term, then have served a second term after that. Been an engineer for about 40 years, and I have enjoyed being involved with the zoning board to kind of learn the ordinances and on the way, and to kind of put in my input that I can whenever we, questions come up through the board.
Great, thank you, and thank you for your service on this point, on this board to this point. Are there any additional questions for Mr. Miller from council?
I have a question. So I want to thank you, Gib, for applying, and I also want to thank you for your service. We greatly appreciate it. So I wanted to get from your perspective, being that you served on the zoning board for quite some time, from your perspective, would you say like the typical responsibilities and duties are for someone who serves on the zoning board?
But basically, the things that come before the board with the people we have involved in the whole, like Clyde and his group, normally when things come to the board, they're very well put together. So really what it is trying to look at the specific situation, understand what the ordinances that are coming into play are, understanding how large the variances are, and also to make sure that the community involvement has been addressed. If you want to do something, put a bigger garage on your house, that your neighbors are aware of it, okay with it, that kind of thing. So I think it's that whole package to try to make sure it's the right thing for Swissvale to approve.
Thank you, Gib. And you noticed some pretty monumental stuff that you was a part of while serving on the zoning board. We see it as council, but the members of the public who are listening, do you mind sharing some of those things?
Well, I mean, there have definitely been share of things like the size of signs, more simple things like that. I think the most recent one was someone who wanted to put a garage where in a lot where the zoning line or the property lines were kind of strange, and to allow setbacks. There have been, I'm trying to think, go back, it's been a while, because I mean there really are only maybe a half a dozen at most a year things that come through. I think what else comes to mind right away.
You have some involvement with the shade tree, right? Our shade tree.
Well, that's completely separate.
That's separate.
Yeah, like I'm the chairman of the shade tree committee.
Okay.
And have been since it started back up. So yeah, I mean it's been a variety of things. I think probably the most controversial one was several years back. Had to do with one of a group home, I guess, technically it'd be called a group home on Hanover Street. That was, and there was a discussion as to, did it make sense to have it there? Also looking at that compared to other similar facilities that were in Swissvale. I remember that one being fairly controversial, but
Well, thank you so much for your service. We have Powers new facilities that are going to be in Swissvale. It's going to be really nice. So thank you so much for your service, Gabe, and thank you so much for applying.
all righty.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you, Gib.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is Mr. Petty in the waiting room? Greg, can you remind us how long some of these appointments would be for that zoning board? How long, what year term is that?
Zoning is a 5-year term. Planning Commission is a 4-year term. Water Authority, I think, is a 5.
Okay.
Shade Tree is 4, and Civil Service Commission is 6.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Mr. Petty, are you able to turn on your video and unmute? Mr. Petty, can you hear us?
Yes.
Wonderful. Are you able to turn on video so we can see you? Perhaps not. Okay. Well,
Hold on
Mr.
one second.
Okay.
Yeah, apparently it's not letting me.
That's all right. We can still have this conversation. I know
Okay.
for myself, it's often helpful to put faces with the names. We see these names all the time, and sometimes I need to have my memory jogged. So, Mr. Petty, thank you so much for your application. You have applied for the Planning Commission. And I'm going to ask the same question that I'm going to ask every candidate, and then invite any other council members to ask questions of their choosing. Can you tell us something about yourself and why you have applied for this board, for this commission?
Sure, I've been a lifelong resident of Swissvale. Prior member, I've been a member at least 12 years, possibly more. I think I know the residents. I know some of the business people. I want to see Swissvale succeed. I'd like to see the Cary Furnace site plan finished. And now that COVID's over, hopefully we can get more involved in the business district, get out there, get talking to more people, get more people involved.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council?
Hi, George. Thanks. Oh,
Yes.
Mhm.
You can go.
hi. Thanks for applying. I saw, and you just mentioned in your application about the business district. I was just curious, looking down Monongahela and Noble, what kind of businesses would you like to see come to Swissvale?
Any kind that would, be sustainable for the borough and for all the borough. Yeah, I think we have enough barbershops, enough little convenience stores. I think we need to see something else go in, we have enough beauty salons, everything else like that. Something that's different, something that people would come to Swissvale for.
Ms. Scales, go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Petty, what is your understanding in terms of what the duties and the expectations are for the Planning Commission?
It is to overview the borough, overview the things that people want and want to see in the borough, different aspects of housing, business, recreation, parks, things like that. Anything good for the borough that would bring people here, bring more people into Swissvale.
And I want to thank you as well for your service and for applying to serve another term with us as well. Mr. Petty, do you want to highlight some of the initiatives that you have been a part of or took part in while serving on the Planning Commission?
I think we started with the Cary Furnace site, but then of course, again, with COVID coming in, everything was just put on the back burner. Everything was just, nothing was really going on. I like to see more of the things go on in the borough. I think we need to get a strong business district in here. We used to have one growing up. There was always stores. Every storefront was filled. Now, if you look down Monongahela, Noble, Washington Street, half the businesses there are either boarded up or, have just been closed. I think we need to get people involved. We need to get the business owners involved. Again, we used to have a strong business district and more businesses are moving out. It seems like we have a certain amount of people that have most of the properties on Noble Street, Washington Street. We need them to get start doing something with these businesses. I don't understand why they're just keeping a hold of these businesses, paying the taxes and everything on them, and they're not really doing anything with them. It's like they don't want to be involved. They just want to hold, on to this, not let new things in.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Price.
I was just going to say I've known Mr. Petty for decades. First, there was volunteer work with Rotary, and then I've served on a planning commission with him. And he's a tremendous asset to our community. We're lucky to have him.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Price. Any other questions? Well, Mr. Petty, thank you for your service to this point, and thank you for sharing a little bit about your vision for this commission. We'll be voting next Wednesday.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
All right. If Miss Lawson is in the waiting room, feel free to let her in, and she's in. Look at that. Miss Lawson, are you able to hear us? If so, can you please unmute and turn on your video if you're able? Miss Lawson, are you able to hear us?
Okay, there we go.
Great, wonderful. Well, welcome. Are you able to turn your video on so we can see you?
Sure.
Wonderful, thank you. Ms. Lawson, thank you for reapplying for this position. I'm going to ask the same question I'm asking of all candidates and then opening the floor to other council members. Ms. Lawson, if you can tell us just something about yourself and why you are interested in reapplying for the Planning Commission.
Oh, well, I am a lifelong member and resident of Swissvale, born, raised, 3 generations, and I love this town. And all the progress and regress and whatever I want to be involved in. And I've always felt that the Planning Commission was a very important position or commission, in the town. And I like to have my ear on what's going on in the town. I've been pretty lax since I retired about the council meetings and things, but since COVID, everything changed to, Zoom and online. And I'm involved a lot with other things in my church and whatnot. I do a lot of Zoom meetings. So, and I just, like I said, I love Swissvale. I'm interested in everything that goes on around Swissvale, and especially the things that are make it progress and all the, important buildings that are going to be built and the roads and the, highways and byways of Swissvale. I'm interested in being involved, and I like working with the team of people that are, that make up the Planning Commission, whoever it is, because I've seen several people and I've been involved with it for a little while. And I like to go back.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions from the floor?
No, I see that, oh, from the floor, I'm sorry.
Yes, that's okay.
For the floor, okay.
Ms. Scales, go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Farrell.
Hi, well, Deanne, how are you?
Good. So I want to thank you for applying and also for your service and your continued service. We greatly appreciate it. So from your perspective, what do you believe in terms of are the duties and the responsibilities of the Planning Commission?
From my experience, it has been, one thing we did was set up a new set of, bylaws and not bylaws, but building code things and, things that tell you where people, I forget what it's called right now. I can't, where you park and how to park and how things are arranged in neighborhoods. And also when new businesses come along, there are certain, rules and regulations that they need to follow, to set up their signage and all those kinds of things. And I believe that's what the Planning Commission does, and report to the council on the things that, are happening with their commission.
Thank you. And you've served with us for such a long time. Do you want to highlight some of the initiatives that you took part in while serving on the Planning Commission?
Oh my, well, since I started just even serving in Swissville, they started with a Carrie Furnace project. And that was always some, a lot of things that were involved. We rewrote the, well, I was involved with them when they rewrote the book on, I'm losing some of my words here, but they rewrote the book on the things that you have to have and do within the parameters of, the streets and the zoning things. Let's see what. Oh, there were so many things. There's been of 2 or 3 businesses that happened since I was on the planning distillery. I call it the distillery, right there on Noble Street. The I don't know if it's still there or not. They had a marijuana growing place down there alongside the tracks. It used to be called E.H. Griffin, a big building down there, but along the part where the busway runs, along that, down in that area, several businesses, like I said, 4 or 5 businesses, came to see if they could put their signs in and how far back from the sidewalk people had to park and things like that. But the biggest thing is getting that zoning, the zoning things changed and updated zoning and whatnot like that. That was one of the big ones.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Petty just informed us, he'd like to see, the businesses flourish and more businesses. And, I've heard of that as well from business owners, especially on the business district. Bill Price has mentioned it as well, too. He has a business on Noble Street. Do you have any suspicions or thoughts on how we can flourish the business district or get the wheels churning?
Yeah, that's interesting. At one time, I also was involved with some things in Braddock where they have the enterprise zone and things like that. Things like that to me help neighborhoods where people can find out where the resources are. There's a lot of people who want to start businesses in are attempting to start businesses, but they just don't know where to go and how to go about doing it. There's an empty building, that's nice, but if they don't know about it and they don't know what the process is to get so that they can get funds and raise funds, because I remember they raised funds for Peppers and that he did that. I think that was one of those sites where you give money, and I know Sedco helped set that up. So, and also working with Sedco, working with MBI, but basically providing places where people can have resources to find out how to set up a business, and knowing the rules of the towns and the boroughs where they live, what they could use, what they need, and what resources they can use, go to help them get set up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Farrell.
Okay.
Appreciate you.
Okay, you too.
Ms. Stribling.
Hi, Ms. Lawson, how are you doing today?
How you doing?
Great, great. I just have a quick question. So you said you had retired. What was your previous actual experience in as far as your career, and how does that factor in your helping with the planning commission?
Oh, well, it was involved people, but I worked for Duquesne Light for 41 years, in which I was a meter reader for quite a few of those years. I was a person, I shut people's lights off for a few years, and I worked in the big warehouses. I ran the warehouses, So I always dealt with people and needs service to people, basically, how to serve them, what they needed, and, being able to, help them find those things, and provide them for them. And I loved it. I loved every moment of my 41 years.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Mr. Price. You are muted right now, Mr. Price.
Can't hear you, Bill. You're muted. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to say that I'm so thankful that we have citizens like Farrell that step up and volunteer and put in the time.
How you doing, Bill? Good to
Pretty
see
good.
you.
Horrible. I had my nose operated on 2 days
Oh
ago.
my. Oh, it doesn't look like it from here. But you take care of yourself.
Take care. And thank you, Farrell.
Well, Ms. Lawson, thank you so much for your service to this point in time. We will be voting on these appointments next Wednesday.
Okay.
And thanks for taking some time and telling us a little bit about yourself.
Good, that'll get some fire under my butt about getting on the council meeting calls. Next Wednesday, right?
Next Wednesday, 7 o'clock.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening. Okay, take care.
All right, if Mr. Yesko is available. Let him
Mr.
in.
Yesko is not here. He is not in the waiting room.
Okay.
But Romney Collins is here if you would like to
Yeah,
start.
why don't you let her in, and if we'll loop back after Ms. Schmidbauer to see if he's back, and then we'll get to him at the end. Thanks for joining us, Ms. Crombie Collins. If you're available to unmute and turn on your video. Great, thanks so much. Thanks for your application as the representative for the Water Authority. I'm going to ask the question I've asked of all the applicants and then open it up to the floor for other council members. Can you tell us something about yourself and why you were interested in reapplying for this position?
Well, as I mentioned in my application, I've learned so much. I actually started in October of 2017, filling a seat that was vacated through the death of the prior appointee. And so I had 2 meetings in, and then I've served my 5 years. And I've just learned a lot. I learned something every month. I learned something about how the process works, about how the authority works, and I'd like to continue that. And if it is an issue that somebody else is going to take the seat, then I'd like to give that knowledge to them too, because it is a wide learning berth. And I think that while I think there should be limits, seat limits, reappointment limits. I can see now why people can stay on the board so long, because until you learn it, it's a crazy amount of time that is needed. I think water and water safety is very important, and I'm very happy to be able to contribute through my position on the water board.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions from council? Go ahead, Ms. Scales.
I want to thank you so much for your application and your service, Tracy. I just want to ask you, in terms of from your perspective, what do you believe that the duties and the responsibility of this role is?
So there are, when I first applied in 2017, I asked that question, what is the responsibility? And at the time, Mr. Wilhelm was the manager, and he reached out to the Water Authority executive, and it came back and said, you review contracts and act on the advice of the executives of the Water Authority. Well, it is a little bit more in depth of that. But it is amazing how many people don't question things that are in the contracts. Just recently, we had a presentation about the pension, and we got a packet of information, and one of the exhibits was page A2. And I was the only one that asked, where's page A1? And why isn't it part of the packet? Well, it was an error in numbering of the pages, as simple as that. But, I'm asking those questions. It's not about, oh, I'm sure it's okay. It's about, is it truly okay? And I think there are things, we have some civic organizations that are coming and questioning. There are a lot of things that the authority, because the budget is tight, need to look at in long term, such as a winter moratorium for those below certain income levels. The relationship with Alcosan, Wilkinsburg Penn Joint bills for Alcosan, but to me, it seems like Alcosan has a free reign to do what they want. They don't get the complaints because all of their billing comes through water authorities. So, there's all those relationships to understand and be responsible for, and find ways to make them better, make them stronger, and find ways that the authority can help its population. And the population is, has a wide berth of socioeconomic range.
Thank you so much. I was going to ask you the same second question I've asked everybody else, but you kind of covered that in going over some of the experiences that you had since you took over the position. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council? All right. Well, Ms. Crombie Collins, thank you so much for your application. Thanks for taking some time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Takakis, if you can hear us, do you mind unmuting your audio and turning on your video?
Good evening.
Good evening. Welcome. Thank you so much for your service and your application for the Shade Tree Committee. I'm going to ask you the question I've asked all the applicants so far, and then open it up to the rest of council for any questions they might have. Can you tell us a little something about yourself and why you were interested in reapplying for this board?
Well, yeah, I've had a lifelong interest in nature, and I've been a resident of Swissvale for over 35 years. So I have interest in the community's health. And over the, besides all the credentials I have over the 40-year career of mine, working in the environment and on the 9 Mile Run Monitoring Committee, as a wetland scientist, tree tender, credentials like that are relevant. These last 5 years, it's been a real pleasure working with Gib and, Barb and the rest of the committee. I participate in the events and I have, pretty good knowledge of natural history. So I'm useful in that regard. And also, I'm going to retire soon, so I'll have more time to actually learn more of the administrative parts that are not as fun to do as all the volunteer activity. And I think I would be helped because Gibb seems like he's very patient. And I've never really approached him about this, but that's my intent, is to ask him, hey, how could I help more and get more involved on that end of it? And also I enjoyed working with the Universal Academy right across the street from my house. And we got a nice project there where we put 18 trees this past spring. So that was a great, outreach, to the community, and living here, I'm real glad I worked with those people, and they really participated heavily in the event. And we have some ongoing, things we like to do there as far as educational opportunities with the students, which is always important. But, the other thing I like to do, I wrote down some notes here just so I wouldn't forget to mention it. For instance, helping just, get with the Tree Vitalize stuff and the Arbor Day Foundation's activities and all the paperwork that goes with that, preparing reports, but in Tassie Hollow, North Braddock, I lived right across the bridge, and I have a project there kind of from 1980s where I reforested the North Braddock side of the hollow, and the Swissvale side's like just knotweed, Japanese knotweed. So it kind of all dovetails with an interest, perhaps through the climate action plan, to make sure that that's a part of the plan, perhaps, is to restore and enhance areas like that, might be private property, might be PennDOT, but to find some way to work on getting projects like that done, which might, provide an acre or two more of canopy. And also I'd like to see more activity in our environmental justice areas. From my house here on down St. Lawrence, there's not a single street tree, and it's maybe the people's preference. So I think we need to be somehow more engaged with the community, and all parts of our community. Same thing on Woodstock, down where my house was in, North Braddock, walking over to Swissvale to visit people. Not as many trees there in some areas, a lot of our efforts go into the areas that people are embrace trees. I think we need to make more people feel like, it's just not a nuisance to clean up the leaves, that they're worthwhile and part of the community. So that's plenty, I hope.
Great. Thank you so much for all of that, and for the time that you've spent on this committee so far. Are there additional questions from council? Ms. Gales?
I just want to thank you so much for your service and for applying for the position. You've gone through a nice description of your level of involvement. I just want to ask you, from your understanding, what do you believe the duties and the responsibility are for this role?
You mean just the strict duties of the Shade Tree Advisory Committee?
Yes.
Our goal is to work with the borough, Greg Bocci, I guess, Bocci. We provide information to them on how to maintain and which trees might be in need of removal or service. That's one of our functions. And the other part that's important is the public outreach, where we have our website and we're trying to, get people to voluntarily, have trees put in front of their house. I think that's two of the big parts of it. And the borough has been real cooperative as far as providing materials and resources to help us with our tree installation projects. So that partnership, and maintaining that is important to us too. Beyond that, I, couldn't say any more off the top of my head.
Thank you so much. Appreciate your service.
Thanks.
Any other questions from council? Well, thank you so much for your service and for taking some time tonight to let us know a little bit about your time so far.
Thank you.
Okay, hope to
Thank you.
continue the partnership, and even if I'm not a full member, I would still stay involved in all the activities and probably attend a lot of meetings. So,
Thank you. And I'd failed to mention, next Wednesday is when we're voting on these appointments.
okay. Oh, it's good to know. Thank you.
Yep,
And then you'll
thank you.
know the results.
Excuse me?
You'll let us know the results by email.
Yes, we will. Someone from the office will reach out to all of the applicants.
Okay, thanks so much.
Great, thank you.
Good night.
Mr. Summersgill is not in the waiting room. But
Okay.
Ms. Midbauer is.
Let's go ahead with Mr. Midbauer. Good evening, Ms. Schmidbauer. If you're able to hear us, do you mind unmuting and turning on your video?
Okay, there I
Wonderful.
am.
Thank you so much. Welcome to the
Welcome.
meeting. Thank you for your service. So just to let everyone know, Ms. Schmidbauer is reapplying for the Civil Service Commission. I'm going to ask you the question I've asked all applicants and then open it up to the floor for any other council questions. Can you tell us just a little bit something about yourself and why you are interested in reapplying for this commission?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about, I've lived here for 30 years. Or close to 30 years anyway, I think it's like 29. I am in the human resources field. I've been in that for, 25 years. Recently, as in 3 years ago, I did a lot of staffing, and the first 16 years. In the last 3 years, I've done human resources. So I interview, I hire, I fire, I do orientations, have hired for, education, graphic arts, finance. I'm in food manufacturing now. I work for a bakery barn that makes protein bars. So that's a little bit about what I do professionally. Personally, I think a lot of people in Swissvale may know me from Knitting by Pam and Donna. We used to go to the farmers markets and all that type of stuff. So I do a lot of that at home. So.
Thank you. Can you tell a little bit about your interest in the Civil Service Commission? Maybe your experience and why you want to continue in?
Sure. I think the police here, well, anywhere, that's a tough job now. And anytime I've had dealings with the Swissvale police, they've been very pleasant, very professional. But I am seeing, I would say in the past year or so, you are seeing a little bit of a difference in just the community in general. I actually can hear gunshots and all that now. Anything I can do to obviously help that, we need to stop this now. So anything I can do to assist, in finding good people, I'm up for it.
Thank you. Are there questions from council? Go ahead, Ms. Scales.
I want to thank you so much for applying, and also thank you so much for your service.
Yeah, thank you.
Based upon your experience, what do you understand the duties and responsibilities are for this role?
Well, I've done the role, so I know a lot of it is, participating in the meetings. I've gone to the testings, and just kind of witnessed that, as well as trying to go to the interviews. I try to do that, as much as possible. That's one thing that for some reason I'm particularly good at. Everybody at work always says, "Oh, take Pam into the meeting because she can read through people pretty well." It's just listening, it's hearing, it's trying to figure out if this person's going to last or not. And you can tell in the first few minutes just by asking a few questions. So in the interviews that I have participated in there, it has been interesting to see who has lasted. But yeah, I know that's a big part of it. And I know there's a lot coming up now because I obviously heard what's going on with trying to find police. I think you're part of that. You were on the YouTube video the other day, just on finding people and what we're having to do now to find people.
Gotcha. Do you want to highlight any of the initiatives that you've taken part in while serving on the commission?
Like I said, I participated in the interview process, done that a couple times, gone to the various testings, participated in the phone calls, on, who we're going to have, who we're going to put in front of the council. So I've done all that.
Okay. Thank you so much.
I think you're welcome.
Any other questions from council? Well, thank you so much for your service. We will
Thank
be
you.
voting on these appointments next Wednesday at our 7 o'clock
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
And thanks for your time tonight, telling us a little about yourself and your experience with the commission so far.
Okay, terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Sarah, are either Mr. Yesko or Mr. Summersgill in the waiting room?
No, there is no one in the waiting room.
Okay. So we are done with our interviews for boards and commissions. I am going to suggest that we take a 5-minute break, mute our audio and video to step away. I don't think we're going to discontinue the stream. I think this is the same stream that'll be for our agenda meeting in 8 minutes. Try to be back since we have no other business to attend to beforehand. We'll try to begin that meeting as promptly at 7 o'clock as we can. So go ahead and take a 5-er.
Good evening.
Good evening.
For those that are joining, we are already live on YouTube. I just want to remind everyone of that. It is now 7 o'clock. If council members are able to unmute either audio or video, so it signals to me that you are here and present. Okay. Sarah, are we okay? I just heard the recording again.
Yes, we just paused the recording. We've been live streaming.
Okay, we'll continue. Thank you. All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome to the agenda setting meeting for the Borough of Swissvale, January 25th at 2023. And I want to call the meeting to order at 7 o'clock p.m. sharp. Let's go through roll call. Miss Alfonso Wells.
Here.
Mr. Miser.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here.
Miss Salisbury.
Here.
Miss Scales.
Here.
Miss Stribling.
Here.
Mayor Schwartzwelder.
Here.
Wonderful. I also am here. Next item on our agenda is public comment, of which none was submitted today or before today. The deadline, just a reminder to everyone, is noon the day of our meeting to submit those public comments to be a part of the meeting and share that. Is our agenda items. Item A had prior to this meeting beginning at 6 o'clock, 6:10 roughly, had interviews for a number of the vacant positions for our boards and commissions. So I don't know if there's any conversation or discussion around that before we would vote next Wednesday.
If I could just add, we have a newly formed Human Relations Commission that we formed last month. So we will be advertising in the Swissvale newsletter, and there will be advertisements online and in the on our various social media pages, looking for members for that. So there will be a description of the position and a deadline established sometime, probably late March, so that we can appoint people to that board in April.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Batchy. That is something we discussed at our meeting at the beginning of the month, just to make sure there was plenty of time for folks to apply for that and not rush the formation of that, specifically, as you said, wanting to make sure that we had that blur for communication purposes. Additional discussion from council regarding that? So something that I did want to bring up that is kind of tangentially related to this is all of the people who have worked on the boards whose terms were expiring have reapplied, with the exception of the Recreation Board. Mr. McFarland has chosen not to reapply. And so if that is not filled, now we are up to, I believe, 3 vacancies, which is almost half of the Recreation Board. I wanted to take some time just to think about the rec board. If we could take, I thought maybe if we set aside 20 minutes, wherever we're at the conversation, cap it, but just in a deliberative meeting like this to talk a little bit about what the rec board does and how we as a council can support them, because I think most of the other boards and commissions have very clear goals and expectations, and I do think that the rec board flounders a little bit in a lack of those similar goals and expectations. So I just want to open the floor to that if anyone has any thoughts. I have plenty, but I'll stop talking for a little bit.
Well, I've never served on the rec board, so I can't speak from any sort of personal experiences or so. But I know that the rec board is very instrumental when it comes to our parks, whether that be the maintenances, the maintaining of the parks, the building of a new park, any sort of recreational related activities that could benefit our youth. That's when they come into play.
I guess for me, and maybe this is a question, and I don't know if another member of council can speak to it or if we would need a member of the board to speak to it, is what is the issue, you know, getting people to sign up for the board? Does the board feel that they don't have the support of council / the borough? Is it there's not any initiatives going on and so it's just kind of a stagnant board? Or what is, you know, the underlying issue leading to, you know, a 50% vacancy of the board?
Well, I'll possibly respond to that, Josh. So I served on the rec board. I was on the rec board, I'm not sure how many years, 5 years, 6 years. It was a 4-year term plus. Chaired that board for a number of years. And during the time that I was there, we had a number of things that we tried. We had family fun nights down at Memorial Field over the summers, trying to provide alternatives. We had a whole set of goals, vision, and mission objectives. You know, the rec board at the time was responsible for the rec board has never been responsible for the actual maintenance, but would make recommendations to council in terms of what should be, you know, what needed to be done, dealt with the field usage at the time, reserving the Memorial Field and whatnot. And I think that soon before my time expired, I know that the bylaws of what the rec board was changed. In fact, it's not technically the rec board anymore, recreation board. It was the Recreation Advisory Committee. And some of those powers were removed from the rec board. And I do think that actually took a little bit of the wind out of the sails of what they were doing at the time. And so I do think that I just don't know that there's a strong vision of what the rec board ought to be doing and right now for the community. I know Miss Tanya, you know, had applied last year, had expressed some interest in, you know, walking and things like that. And I think we all would love to see that, but there has not necessarily been an opportunity, whether or not she's feeling empowered. I don't know if the board is even meeting with any regularity to see. I just wanted to brainstorm ideas of what could be done to give them a little bit, a little oomph behind some of the vision that they do have.
Yeah, I guess maybe what we need to do is find out from those that are still serving, and even those that are no longer serving with us, find out in terms of, you know, what's going on from their perspective, so that we can then figure out how to help. Or maybe it's more just getting more community involvement and community engagement. I know with like my kids, it has to be something of interest to them. And it has to be a lot of times facilitated by someone they know or they connect with. So when those two things are missing, you lose their interest real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I know one of the things we often talk about as council is a desire to provide services and opportunities for our youth. And I do think the rec committee of the different committees and boards that we've been talking about does have one of the more unique opportunities to really, I mean, it's part of the rec board's mission statement was to provide healthy alternatives for our youth. The first half is something about creating a sense of pride for our community. And yeah, so I do think that there's a lot of potential there for this community. Ms. Stribling, go ahead.
I think oftentimes we as adults tend to try to make up ideas of what we think the kids want instead of actually asking the kids themselves, what would they like to see? What type of events, what type of programming would they like to see? And then with those informations, with you doing like an informational piece, then we can get together as the adults or whoever's on the board and decide to bring those to fruition. Because I think oftentimes we think what we think kids want, but kids might want something completely different. So I think possibly if we maybe start there by organizing some meetings with the kids in the community, then that would give us some idea on what can build the cornerstone for the advisory group.
Thanks, Ms. Stribling. Mr. Batchy.
Yeah, I was just going to say that maybe the thing we need to do is Sarah and I need to reach out to the board members and as Ms. Scales said, some of the past board members, find out why they don't want reappointed, what the issue is or what the perceived issue is, and see what we can do to empower them to meet. Because like when you were chair, Mr. Ansel, I know you guys were meeting all the time. And you were doing the programming and that it kind of went by the wayside after you became a council member and weren't on that board anymore. I think maybe the problem is the board doesn't realize they do have some authority to do these programs. It's up to them to call a meeting, not up to us to call a meeting of the board. So maybe it's a simple start like that where we sit down with them individually or as a group and just explain what their role is and empower them to take the lead on that.
Yeah, thanks for that suggestion. Does anyone else have thoughts based off of what Mr. Batchy said? That seemed like a good first step. Okay. Yeah, Mr. Batchy, why don't you do that? And actually, can you just keep me looped into the conversation? Yeah. I mean, as we're talking about this, in many regards, the rec board doesn't really have any kind of staff or council liaison, whereas a lot of the others have some type of, whether it be, I know civil service and police committee don't work necessarily hand in hand, but there's a relationship between certain elements of council and the staff and the commission. So that might be something that I can kind of stick my nose in a little bit and hear what they have to say as well.
And I think it'd be good to have you involved in maybe some discussion, some or all discussions with those members, since you were one of the most active rec board members in the past. And like I said, I had no involvement with the rec board in my previous positions with the borough. So you're probably the most knowledgeable person about what went on there. Yeah,
we just asked you to level the ball field, or I don't know, one of those types of things with your cut the grass.
Yep.
When you're with Public Works. Ms. Stribling, is that a new hand?
Yeah, that's a new hand.
Okay, great. I thought I would have went away and then came back again.
Because I'm definitely interested in looking for ways to kind of help our youth and have some programming that'll just bring some light to them. So if I can definitely be a part of that, I'd be interested.
Great, thank you so much. All right, and I said a lot, 20 minutes, and we haven't even spent 10 yet, so that's great. Any other comments? All right, we'll keep moving.
I'm sorry, Chris.
No, go ahead.
I'd like us also to use our own resources too. I mean, Scrap is heavily involved with the kids. Scrap Wilson is heavily involved in the kids. He gives a lot of feedback, a lot of insight. That's someone who's, on a day-to-day basis is actively involved with our youth.
And he knows the kids, yeah.
We need to if he's willing to connect with the recreation board, or when the recreation board
he's
members
on the
reach
rec.
out to him.
He's on the rec board.
Oh, he's on it.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, then let's use some of Angela's suggestions and some of mine, and probably also, you know what, our local churches has youth programming. We should start partnering up with some of the youth related stuff we got going on, and build on that as well.
Is there ever, and I don't want to put extra pressure or anything on the commissions, but these commissions kind of meet and go on behind the scenes, and we don't, as council, don't always hear what's going on with them. I mean, are there opportunities for those commissions to report anything back to council on any sort of basis, like a quarterly, here's what we've discussed, here's what's going on. So at least that communication stays open between council and those commissions. You know, I hate making it required or whatever, but I think it's healthy for there to be an ongoing dialogue to, you know, not only keep us informed as council, but, you know, make it clear that these commissions are important voices in the community.
Well, and, you know, maybe along those lines, I think that's a great suggestion. You know, one of the initiatives that Ms. Scales had introduced a few months ago was the Meet the Police. It was an opportunity for us to put a face with the name and know who's serving us. I mean, maybe we have some kind of rotating monthly schedule where each month a different commission or board reports on something. I think it would be good for us, but it would also be good for residents that don't know what the Planning Commission does or the Civil Service Committee does. Just to have 5 to 10 minutes to share a report. And, you know, with the number we have, that would probably be twice a year, 1.5 times a year that they'd be reporting, and there would at least be something.
Yeah, and to further that, all the activities of the Planning Commission, Civil Service Commission, I mean, that goes from them to, then it moves on to council. Because everything the Planning Commission does, they're an advisory body, so council has to approve it. Civil Service Commission, anything that they recommend, council has to approve, unless it's a disciplinary thing. But you know, the other boards, like the Zoning Hearing Board, when they hear a case, we can certainly, you know, make sure that, you know, that's all pushed on to you. The Shade Tree Advisory Committee, typically, I don't know if they still are, but they typically in the past have given us their minutes of their meetings, so those can all be passed on to everyone. And, you know, whatever boards are meeting, you know, we'll get copies of their minutes, or we can do a summary in the office to give to council, whether, you know, you want it monthly, quarterly, whatever the case may be.
Ms. Salisbury.
I just wanted to say I like the idea of what you proposed, sort of how we do the Meet the Police. I thought that was a good idea, because as long as I've been on council, I don't think, I mean, obviously like Tracy Crombie Collins comes and tells us the Water Authority report, but we haven't done that for other groups.
Yeah, let's explore that a little bit. So tangentially, we have 2 parallel tracks, one of trying to see greater visibility of our boards and commissions on council meetings, and the other, Mr. Batchy and Ms. Ansel and myself, and perhaps Ms. Stribling as well. So some connection of us will reach out to the rec board and to see what we can do to jumpstart some of the ideas that they have. All right, well, let's move on. I know this was not on the agenda. Mr. Batchy let me know late that this one was happening after the agenda was published. Mr. Batchy, if you can, I'll just say it's a resolution for a sewer grant, the sewer grant on Schley Avenue that we had a resolution for. It sounds like the grant has come back and offered us more money, I believe, but we need to pass a new resolution.
Yeah, the state reviewed it, and they disagreed with our numbers. They felt it was going to cost more than what we were requesting. So they wanted us to change the resolution to make it, I think it's around 400,000 now, because they legally cannot give us more than what's in the resolution. So they felt that we didn't have enough in there, and we had our resolutions for 350,000. So they just wanted to bump it up to 400,000. So we just have to reapprove the resolution and send it off to them next week. So it sounds like it's like it may get funded, since you know, since they're asking us to change that.
Ms. Salisbury.
Did they make that determination from doing that survey where they were going door to door?
No, the survey was done by us to determine that this is a different grant. That one's a CDBG grant. This is the COVID-19 Small Water and Sewer Service. This is actual construction costs it's based on.
Got it. Thank you.
That one was to determine if the project was eligible for CDBG funding.
Oh, do we have any other areas in Swissvale that are eligible for this, or was that the only area?
Well, this is the worst sewer line that we have. That's why that we know of. So that's why we targeted this one first. And then there's one, the next one I think will be Collingwood Avenue. And then there's a few others like in the Monroe and Wayne area that need some work.
And we have to reapply and do a new resolution every time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions or discussion around that new resolution? All right. Well, that concludes our agenda items. We'll move on to departmental reports. First is police. Chief Watson.
Good evening, everybody. The only thing I have tonight is to give you a progress report on the LEAD program. We are to the point that the Connect has hired through their company that they're using, Pathways to Recovery, 2 social workers for our cohort, which again is us, Braddock Hills, Forest Hills, Churchill, and Wilkins. We are going to start meeting every 2 weeks with the implementation of this program. And we're going to start with social referrals, which would be people in the community that we deal with in a non-criminal way, but who may need services that the police department, can't provide. But the social worker would be able to get them those services, whether they're homeless or they have mental health issues or things like that. So I'm happy to say that there's been a lot of progress in the past couple of months, and that's where we're at. And I will update council again next month with the next step in this. That's all I have for tonight.
Thank you, Chief Watson. I do want to add that for any community members that we did hold a special meeting on Monday night that Chief Watson was a part of with Ms. Scales, Mr. Batchy, and they invited two outside guests, Ms. Staldemeyer from the Turtle Creek Valley COG and Ms. Kelly from Connect, to talk about the nature of regionalization, and in particular, the challenges of staffing for police and the possibility of regionalization going forward. So if that is something that you have not gotten to see, it is on the YouTube channel for Swissvale. You can feel free to go back and view that. And I've heard a lot of feedback, a lot of positive information. I think the residents really appreciated what was shared. So I just wanted to add that to as an addendum to your report.
And thank you, Mr. President.
And thank you to the members of the public who came out to that meeting and provided feedback and questions, and were instrumental in getting that dialogue started. So thank you.
It was a good experience to speak with them and hear what they had to say.
Thanks. All right, let's move on to item B, Code and Fire Report. Chief Wilhelm.
Just a few things to touch on. We're preparing for a hearing next Wednesday for 2115, 2117 Noble Street for the demolition hearings. So we're gathering that stuff up. I believe that's next week at 6 o'clock, which was already previously advertised by the manager. Last year, in 2022, we had the busiest year ever. I know the year before I told you in 21, we had the busiest year ever in the history of the department, and our call volume for emergency calls actually increased 9.4% in 22 over 21. So it's just continuing to increase. The bulk of that call volume increase was medical calls, but we're still reviewing the data and looking at a lot of different stuff. We'll give you a more formal report probably sometime in February that gives you a better picture of what it is. And lastly, I got to spend some time this afternoon with Ms. Alfonso Wells with the Future of Fire Connect meeting. I guess they're kind of rebooting and starting to try to work towards coming up with some solutions here in a region, and just trying to be a part of that to give some helpful insight. And that's all I have to report for this month.
Thank you, Chief Wilhelm. I'll add an addendum. I didn't get to see it. I Googled it, but I couldn't find it. But I know Chief Wilhelm was featured on a WTAE interview on Sunday regarding, I would imagine, that same issue of kind of the future of fire and some of the staffing shortages and things like that. So thank you for representing the borough and sharing your knowledge with the broader community.
Yeah, if you Google WTAE listens, it will appear. That's what you have to put in the Google search.
Thank you. I searched Swissvale and I searched fire, and I said I didn't give me the results I needed. Yeah. All right, Ms. Scales.
Thank you so much also for the interview. When did the interview take place, Mr. Wilhelm?
It was last Wednesday.
Okay.
Previous Wednesday. They contacted me a few days before that. I conferred with the manager and let him know that we had a request and asked his permission to attend, and that's how it ended up happening.
Thank you. Going forward, just for the public's sake, if we could do something like that as a public forum with the community, so that this is something that they know of and they're not learning of through the news.
And I'm not
just with some of the information with staffing shortages with our volunteer fire departments and things of that nature, which is common. It's a nationwide issue that is taking place. And we on council, we are aware of it, but I don't think even like in a council meeting, we have basically publicly stated this so that our residents were, just enlightened prior to it being broadcasted, on the news. That was my only thought.
Oh, it wasn't actually about Swissvale. It was about it was about the broader picture of the fire service, regionally, statewide, and nationally. It had nothing to do with our community. As a matter of fact, I plugged our community because our community since 1906 has been supportive of a combination fire system, meaning career and volunteers. And we've been able to sustain that. And because of our community's commitment to that type of service, we don't experience the issues that so many of the other communities do. And that was the message that I put forth. But the reality is we were talking about in general about volunteer fire service and how it's changed so badly. And because there's not anybody volunteering for anything anymore. Let alone being a volunteer firefighter and how much of an impact that's had. And it was just pulling from my 40 years of being involved in the fire service. And it was also EMS. I was sitting with a director of medic rescue from Beaver County, who was also commenting about the EMS issues and how we're both facing those same issues in both services. That's what it was about. It wasn't about Swissvale.
Gotcha.
You'd be the first to know if we had an issue in Swissvale before it was on the media.
Sure. It would have been, it's probably very similar to Mr. Wilhelm being part of the conversation with Connect today, using his expertise and experience to speak more generally on the issues that the many departments across our region are having.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that clarity. I appreciate it.
Ms. Alfonso Wells, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Chief Wilhelm for his insights that he brought to the meeting. They were very well taken, and I think it will help to contribute to some of the solutions that we have for the region as a whole. So we really appreciated that. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Well, let's move on to item C, Public Works. Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Good evening. Just a couple things. We've been pretty busy over the last couple of weeks with snow and ice removal. I know we haven't had any big storms yet, but we've had just enough to get called out pretty regularly. I think the guys been doing a good job. Hope everyone's happy with that. And lastly, one of our guys, Dan Fields, started his CDL classes earlier this month. He's one of our more experienced guys, and he's about halfway through. He'll be tested in early March, and we're pretty confident that he's gonna pass his test, and we will have a extra CDL driver.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I'm sure that is exciting and I'm sure breathing a sigh of relief. And we still have funding for another one this year. So hopefully we can find another employee that wants to go through that course as well.
Yeah, it's much needed.
Any other questions? Ms. Salisbury, go ahead.
This isn't actually a DPW question, but I did see, in case anybody didn't notice on Facebook, it's probably other places too, but we're offering tuition benefit to anyone who wants to go to school to be a police officer too. So I don't know if we've really promoted that very heavily. I know we talked about CDL training.
We did. We put it in the newsletter. We put it on our website. And
yeah, I ran across it on Facebook. So I know everybody sees things different places, but I'm a Facebook gal.
Yeah, it's great opportunities. And actually the DPW one was based off the archetype of the police idea that came up a year or so ago. And so no one's taken us up on it for the police. Hopefully someone does in the near future. Would love to see residents of our community serve the community in that way. But glad that we can help to provide some resources to try to provide that advancement, whether it be members of our community or members of our staff. So thank you for Mr. Fields for taking that initiative for it. Let's move on to our borough manager's report, Mr. Batchy.
Thanks, sir. Just a couple things. We are, as Chief Wilhelm mentioned, we are having the demolition clearance hearings for 2115 and 2117 Noble Street next Wednesday, February 1st. That is at 6:30. Those will be broadcast through our YouTube channel. And if anyone has an interest, basically if they're a property owner, lien holder, neighboring property owner, somebody that's aggrieved by the condition of the buildings, please notify the borough before about 2 o'clock next Wednesday, so we can give you a Zoom link to participate in the hearing. But basically, the standard for having standing to participate is the fact, if you were an adjacent property owner, or you have a financial interest in the building, such as a lien holder. All the lien holders have been notified. The property owners have been notified of that hearing that will be occurring.
Mr. Batchy, do you mind pausing for a second so Mr. Price can ask his question, and then you can resume your report?
Absolutely.
I was just curious if we've heard back from the property owners, if they're contesting this, or if we know if they're going to appear.
I have had a conversation with the property owner's daughter, and she told me she had some information that would help the situation. That was about 3 weeks ago. She's never provided the information. I have not heard back from her. I expect that she would probably ask for a Zoom link for next week to participate in the hearing. But I had one conversation. I believe Chief Wilhelm had a conversation with her also. But this is the same owner that was ordered to demolish it 2 or 3 years ago. And now they're telling us that they have a contractor. Same story as 3 years ago. So.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Batchy. Go ahead and continue your report.
Sure. 2 more things, or 3 more things. Our auditors from Mayor Dussel began our annual audit on Monday. They're already done with their field work. It usually takes them 3 to 4 days, but we usually provide them a pretty good package of stuff to look at that's together, and they don't have to hunt for stuff. So they were actually done with their field work in 2 days. They had some follow-up questions and follow-up documents, but we expect everything to be good as usual, and that will be done. It's required to be filed with DCED by March 31st, so we'll have that done before then. Unfortunately, I received a letter today, and unfortunately, we did not receive the GED TF grant that we applied through Allegheny County for funding for improvements at Memorial Park. So we'll continue to look for other funding sources for that, because there are some much needed improvements down there, such as fencing. They just had an astronomical amount of need, and people asking for money, and ours didn't make the cut. And the final thing is, we will be moving to our temporary headquarters at West Junior High School, where the goal is next Thursday, Friday of next week, the 2nd and 3rd. This was based upon Comcast's availability to move our phone system, and Comcast has told us that those are the dates they can do it on the 2nd. So we figured, they told us they could do 2nd or 3rd. We chose the 2nd, which is a Thursday. That way, if it doesn't get completed on the Thursday, it'll be complete. We have Friday to finish it. So I would ask the council and the public, please be patient with us at the end of next week, because we will be transitioning, moving all of our furniture, documents, IT things, computers and such up there. So we will be shut down for a day or 2 as far as phones and IT. Our IT person, Mr. Nickel, has been doing some installation of servers and racks up there. So, we hope it's a short downtime, but I also ask council to be patient that the end of, mid to end of next week, that will be our only focus, so we can focus on is getting up and running up there. So.
Ms. Alfonso Wells.
Yes, where will people who need to vote and usually vote in the borough building, where will they have to go to vote? Because there are a couple of elections coming up, and I know there's going to be one in February for a special election seat. And where are they supposed to go? Like, are they going to get notification, or do you even have anything to do with that?
For the February 7th special election, they will still vote at Roslyn Street at the Borough Building. I notified the county that they could still use it that day. All the utilities will still be on. The room will be available for them. But probably prior to May 16th, they will be starting the asbestos abatement. Once they do that, the building's not available, which I did notify the County Election Bureau that they would need to find another location for the May 16th primary
Okay,
for that voting district.
thank you.
Well,
Mr. Price. You're muted, Mr. Price.
Sorry about that. I was just curious if it would be viable to consider moving council to live meetings at the end of next month up at the school.
I don't know if we can make the end of next month because there's a lot of things we have to do to get the technology to work. But I think if we make a target date for the following month, that may be doable. Did talk to Mr. Nickel about that last week, and you know, we have to purchase some microphones and such because after like Monday's meeting, one of the things like with Monday's meeting, we did find out where there are some issues in the way we would have to do it. Like there was like if you watched the YouTube, there were a couple people like when the audience talked, it was hard to hear them. And also even some of the presenters when their voice, when we had to keep reminding them to talk a little louder. So you know, that's something we could work toward maybe for end of March, beginning of April, I think should be doable. There's a large classroom right near the administrative area and the police area that may be usable for that. The only thing, there is an issue with keeping people out of the rest of the school because there are no barriers between the, you know, when you get into that classroom, there's restrooms right outside of it. So that's something we need to work through there, is, you know, because we can't have people wandering around the school.
Mr. Miser.
Yeah, just curious on the topic of, you know, microphones and whatnot for accommodating in-person meetings, just as kind of a quick aside, is that something that's been factored in to the new building, is having microphones, you know, either like small hanging microphones in the room or whatever, just so we can, the technology's there for us to be able to live broadcast meetings?
Oh yeah, there'll be projectors in there. There'll be a stationary camera, you know, to broadcast the meetings from, so nobody has to use, you know, in the past we've used like a laptop or tablet actually, or somebody's cell phone to broadcast the meetings out. So there'll be a stationary camera, or maybe more than one stationary camera plus built-in microphones. Yeah, definitely will. That is definitely part of the building design.
Ms. Salisbury.
My question was answered with the last sentence, so never mind.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, I know, you know, Mr. Price, you had brought that up a month or so ago, and I know Mr. Batchy's been on it. I had a conversation with Mr. Nickel on Monday as well. I talked to Mr. Batchy yesterday also, just trying to figure out some of those issues, technology and security for the building. And I think once we can cross some of those hurdles, that the goal would be to be back in person. I mean, someone asked me, I don't remember who it was, if it was my desire to be back in person. And I said, yes. You know, we've been acting on Zoom a little unorthodoxly in this emergency situation. And that's because we had a building that was falling apart, quite literally, and no council chambers. And, you know, we are now going to have some space that we could actually have those meetings. So we're going to try to get back in there as quickly and effectively as we can. So thanks for asking those questions. Anything else, Mr. Batchy?
No, that's all I had.
All right, Ms. Salisbury, go ahead.
I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Batchy for installing new signage and a flashing light at Monongahela and Schroyer, because people have been struggling with that intersection since the traffic pattern changed. I myself was screamed at and given the finger for stopping there, which is what you're supposed to do now. But we've had a little bit of a struggle of adjustment, but I saw there was some discussion on Facebook, and Mr. Batchy got us new signs and a flashing light. So I'm hopeful that will bring to people's attention that you have to stop when you're coming up Monongahela toward Schroyer now.
And just so you know, I had to promise my firstborn grandchild to my sign guy to get him to do those quickly. But he went ahead and made those quickly, since we rarely ask him for favors. So he was able to do that for us.
Well, that's what happens when you use Rumpelstiltskin as your sign guy.
Yes, well, thanks for getting that together. All right, well, let's move on to my report. The only thing I wanted to bring up is executive session. We met last week as an executive session for purposes of litigation, and we will be meeting after the meeting tonight in executive session to discuss matters of personnel. So those are the things that I was going to share. And because I shared some of the other things midway through some of the other reports. Solicitor's report, Mr. McTiernan.
Yes, good evening. Bob McTiernan here. I think the subject's been already pretty well covered. I was going to comment on the demolition hearings at 6:30 next Wednesday for 2115 and 2117 Noble. But I will add so that for council's information that before those hearings are held, we do a thorough title search to make sure there's been no change in title or no one else has gained an interest in the property since the last time we had a hearing, and Chief Wilhelm makes sure that everyone receives a full notice. So we do cover due process on that. So when the hearing is over, whatever decision council makes, everybody has been included and everybody's been notified. So, but most of my other issues are executive session items. So that's my only comment for this evening. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mr. McTiernan. Other new business before we adjourn for executive session? Yes, Ms. Scales.
I just want to send out a reminder that the DEI committee has opened up
Thank you.
Nominations to the public for Black History Month. What we have done for, let's see here, the past 2 years, if we've honored our very own who embodied the spirit of Black History Month, and the deadline is quickly approaching, which is this Friday. And we are asking for, if you know a resident that embodies the spirit of Black History Month, to submit in their name and where they're at, and a photo as well to the borough office, so that the DEI can include that in our determination in terms of who our honorees will be. Also, based on the type of nominations I've received, it has become apparent to us that maybe we should discuss what is Black History Month and why we celebrate Black History Month every year. And if you'll allow me, Chris, it's not long, it's just a little snippet.
Sure, go ahead.
In terms of what is Black History Month. Okay, so Black History Month, it is the annual celebration of achievements by African Americans and a time to recognize their central role in U.S. history. The importance of Black History Month is to honor and to celebrate the lives and the achievements of African Americans who have made transformational impacts of American society. It allows us to learn about, celebrate, and honor Black leaders. Many of these leaders endured sacrifice and suffering and must be honored. Black History Month can be traced back to 1926, when Carter Woodson founded Negro History Week. Woodson, an African-American scholar, had many goals when he established the commemorative week in February. He wanted to expose school children to African-American history, but he also wanted to encourage social equity for African Americans by showing people how much of the country's growth stemmed from Black contributions, not only through slavery, but also through countless creative, academic, professional, athletic, political, and cultural contributions. He also aimed to increase Black representation. However, Black representation, it is still lacking today. As our nation continues to struggle with racial inequality, we must understand how history has impacted the present and start to generate solutions. So that is why we celebrate Black History Month annually for the month of February. And when we say nominating those who embody it, it is embodying the purpose and the spirit of the Black History Month celebration.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for that reminder of requesting nominations by the end of the week. Ms. Alfonso Wells.
Yes, I want to make sure that everybody is aware that the Pittsburgh Regional Transit, or PRT, as they have renamed themselves from PAT, which they used to be formerly known as PAT. They are considering, or actually the P3 is on the line for chopping. Well, chopping in terms of not going to any of the Swissvale stops once they get off the busway. And to have the last stop be Wilkinsburg, then Swissvalians would have to transfer to another bus or two, depending on where they are trying to go in Swissvale. It is still open for comment. I will send the survey page, which is a little clunky, but I'll send that to Sarah Ansel to see if she can put it on our page, a link to that. But if you are a concerned citizen and you would like to see that the P3 is not stopped from coming into Swissvale, because it is a viable and alternative route and a quick one to get downtown or to get into Oakland, please make sure that you make comments and that you tell your neighbors to make comments. It is literally based on the volume of comments that they get regarding this as to whether or not they're going to cut it. They said that it's still under consideration, so we still have time to make sure that they don't cut this. I don't even know why they would cut this artery into Swissvale like that. Every other bus takes forever to get here. And particularly for those who are living a little further into Swissvale, this is very important. It makes it affordable for people to come live here, and it's a way for us to get around. So if you are concerned about our bus service, whether or not you take the bus, please make sure you make a comment so that we can keep our bus service. It's very important for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Alfonso Wells, for that. Can we send a letter on behalf of Swissvale, like as council? I mean, is that something that we would need to vote on in a meeting next week to discuss? Because I do think, I mean, I don't have to take the bus often, but that is probably the most regular bus that I do take when I do take it. And I know I understand why that is so essential to get into, East Liberty, East Side, some of those neighborhoods. So
I think that would probably be viable. You'd have to ask Mr. McTiernan, but also do realize that we can also publish an open letter that discusses that, and that gets to an even wider audience. I would just say don't use a union busting newspaper when you do that. Please make sure that you do it at a newspaper where people are not on strike, and that would be perfect.
Mr. McTiernan, what would be the procedure if that is something that we desire to do?
You could do a letter, or you're talking about supporting the current routes and stops for the Swissvale bus. I think a resolution would be very simple, and then you could send that to the Pittsburgh Regional Transit, or have the council vote to send a letter on behalf of the elected officials of the borough, if you have unanimity, which I suspect you will on that. So either one would be appropriate.
So council members, is that something that you'd like to have us add to the agenda for next week to have a wee bit of discussion and move on?
Aye.
Okay. All right, Mr. Batchey, can you add that to the agenda and maybe work up a mock resolution or letter or whatever you think is best for that?
Yeah, I'll put a resolution together for next week, and I'll add this to the agenda.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Ms. Salisbury.
As an aside, there's an alternative to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that is being run by people who are on strike. It's called the PUP, the Pittsburgh Union Progress. So full disclosure, I signed their attestation to support the PUP. So that's something that's going on. So I just wanted to update people on a few things. I wanted to thank the residents who came to the Norfolk Southern Railroad public meeting. We had a nice contingent of Swissvale residents. I don't want to speak out of turn, but I feel like we might have been the best attended station at the public meeting. We certainly had the most elected officials, and I think we probably had the most most residents. I stuck around and I think we had probably like 8 or 10 people who came. So I was very happy that we got people. It was inconveniently located for people in Swissvale. So they went all the way downtown to the convention center to be present at that. If you have anything that you want to say, not only to the transit authority, but also to the railroad, they are also accepting public comments. So the other thing is I met with Duquesne Light and Green Edge, which you might recall was related to our curbside electric vehicle charging initiative. I didn't want people to think we've forgotten about that. It's just taken a really long time to work with Duquesne Light about it. So interestingly, I learned that parts, but not all of Swissvale, and this was mentioned actually earlier when we were talking about shade trees, are in these environmental justice zones. So they have to have, I believe it's 20% of the population living below the poverty line, 30% of the population identifying as a minority. So parts of Swissvale, it goes by census tract, and so parts of Swissvale meet that requirement, parts don't. The one sort of down by Regent Square does not meet that. And then the part that's more toward Edgewood does not meet that, but most of the rest of Swissvale meets those requirements. The nice thing about that is that Duquesne Light is eligible for state and federal funding to do projects in those communities. So that means that instead of being charged $30,000 to open the ground to install a charger, they are eligible to receive funding from the state and federal governments to pay for the cost of the charger, as well as the cost and inconvenience of having everything opened up and installed. So I have connected President Ansel as well as Borough Manager Bacci with the folks who are working on that. They've provided some draft information on that we can move forward on working on. They would like to see us apply for that in the first 6 months of this year, because otherwise we will run out of the time frame for the federal side of the funding. I believe it is. It's only eligible for the front end of this year. Just wanted to update you on that. Also, I met with the Humane Action Pittsburgh folks who are doing our pollinator garden earlier today, and they are also they actually already talked to Gib by email, who was on earlier. And so they are working on getting the trees and plants and so forth ordered and lined up so that those are ready to go. There are some work days that are coming up. If you're interested in volunteering on working on their work days, please let them know. Also, someone drove a big truck through the site of the pollinator garden, so please don't drive through the pollinator garden. That's a bummer. I personally went with the operations director of Humane Action Pittsburgh and laid all of the clover seed and all of the straw and everything over there. So it's a real bummer if you drive through it and mess it up, but it'll be okay. We'll smooth it out. It'll be okay. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is when we met on Monday for the police regionalization, there were some individuals there who brought up that we might want to consider having YouTube comments, because we're streaming no longer through the Borough website, but on YouTube now. So I would like it if we could maybe look at putting that on a future agenda. And that's all my updates and all I have.
Great, thanks so much. Those were some really great updates, a lot of updates. Thank you for
I had to make a post-it.
I know. Well, it's just, I think it just shows the projects that you've taken on, from Humane Action Pittsburgh to, Green Edge to, taking on the railroad and all of that. So thank you for
me against the railroad. That's a tilting at windmills if ever I saw one. But thank you.
Thank you for working on that. And I know, before we started the meeting, Mr. Miser also had brought up the YouTube comment thing. And so I think that is something we should put on a meeting, and maybe we can do some just some brainstorming offline to think through what that could look like, so we have something cohesive to present and kind of go off of, as opposed to just having an open-ended discussion on that. That might be a good place to start. So maybe we can keep that on the radar, and maybe have a more concerted discussion on that at the next month's meeting. Sound good? All right. All in favor of adjourning? Well, I'd like to make a motion. I guess I can't vote yet. Let's make a motion to adjourn at 7:53.
I jumped the gun.
That's
Second.
okay. Second. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
None are opposed. Thank you so much for this meeting. Council, please stick around for our executive session.